And I'm really excited to have Keeley with me today. Keeley is a Dublin-based musician, and she's from Dublin as well. And she's released 2 EPs, Brave Warrior and most recently Echo Everywhere. She's signed to Dimple Discs and is making musical waves the world over, clocking up radio play on indie, local and national stations. Keeley describes her music as psychedelic dream pop, and when you hear it, you'll understand why. Welcome to the show, Keeley. It is great to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Louisa. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm just going to say, I'm just admiring the background of the room that you're in.
Yeah.
You've got, is it album covers all over the wall? I can see blonde.
Every inch of free space in my flat, I have basically shrouded in kind of sonic sort of threads and like album covers, single covers, posters. It's basically like, I mean, I live in a small flat, but when I moved here, because I'd never had a permanent home in my life. I've never lived anywhere that was anything other than a rented flat that I could be turfed out of at any moment, or even back when my mum and my brother and I were growing up, we had to move from constantly. We had to move from flat to flat or house to house. So when I moved in here almost 14 years ago, I thought I could actually make a home here and hopefully get to stay here for at least a while. So I started working on what would become, I suppose, the indie Sistine Chapel, which it is, and it took 10 years to painstakingly piece together. And I kind of wanted it to look, because I'm a real home bird. I love being at home. And because I was going to be here so much, and I didn't realize we were going to have a pandemic where I was going to, and I've been particularly monkish, and what's the word, kind of very much like a hibernating squirrel throughout lockdowns and all the way through the pandemic, where I've barely gone out because I was that determined not to catch COVID. And I've never caught it because I minimize my chances of meeting people. So, I mean, the only thing that can pretty much get me out the door is just to play a gig whenever that occasion arises, or recording sessions or stuff like that. I live for music, but this place, this flat, is sort of the depiction of my heart in a way. I kind of wanted it to resemble on the outside what it feels like on the inside. And all of these bands and singers and that I love, there's basically 40 separate murals consisting of the artworks of 40 separate bands and singers, mostly bands. Everything from the Stone Roses to the Smiths, the Charlatans, the Beatles, Pink Floyd, the Cure, the Pretenders, Suede, Blur, Saint Etienne, and on and so many more. But I just love the place, and it's yeah. I mean, to me, like album art and artwork, like record covers, that's the highest art form. Like if you were to give me a choice between the Mona Lisa or say the front cover of Brotherhood by New Order, there's no contest. It's going to be Brotherhood all day, because I suppose and also the thing I love about really beautiful music artwork and sleeves, album covers, is that they're very often a reflection visually of what the music sounds like. So the art will look like what the music sounds like. And the colors of the artwork will often kind of intertwine with the sound of the song. So you listen to the songs and they'll sound a certain color. If you know what I mean, it's kind of inextricably linked. So for example, like say the cover up to Our Hips by the Charlatans, the Charlatans' third album, which is amazing, but it's a black and green artwork on the cover, and the music sounds black and green. It's quite moody and really majestic, but I kind of love that. I love how artwork can be a real gateway And if you think of, say, for example, So Tough by Saint Etienne, one of my favorite sleeves of all time, and they have the most beautiful approach to artwork, because Bob Stanley, the kind of what's the word? I suppose the kind of artistic architect of that group. He has an amazing kind of nous when it comes to graphic design and images and having, you know, it's just the fonts that they use and the artwork that they use that really frames the record so beautifully. And they're like a world unto themselves. So yeah, there's that sense of just kind of being lost in music and wanting to be lost in music. So to me, it makes far more sense to have music be the walls and the wallpaper. Like, I don't believe in wallpaper. I don't believe in paint. I quite like paint. I love the smell of paint, but I prefer how music looks on the wall. So yeah, it's. I mean, every inch of this place is covered in music, apart from the ceiling. But I tried to get music on the ceiling, but the LP fell down and hit me on the head. So I gave up at that point. Yeah,
because I can see the Beatles up there and Abbey Road sign. It's just amazing. The Smiths.
Yeah,
I wish everyone listening could see this, because it just looks so incredible. It's amazing. I've never seen anything like it. I love it. I'm inspired.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, if I regularly post kind of photos that I've taken here and little video clips I've taken. So if anyone follows me on the socials, on Insta, Facebook and Twitter, I'm Keeley Sound, or we're Keeley Sound on Instagram and Twitter. So yeah, you'll see if anyone would like to see what this place looks like. And I'll just give you a little grand tour. It's called George Jones. So here we go. So right, you've got just the place is kind of and I've tried to kind of make it as chronological as possible. But it's there's so much to delve into. And then if you come into the kitchen, for example, here we go. Hey, where's that? Here is another, like a continuation of the whole thing.
You've got CDs as well. There's vinyl on the walls there, is it? It's the CD covers. Wow.
Yes, just CD covers, vinyl covers, everywhere. Everywhere.
It's incredible. So I suppose I was going to ask you how you got into music, but you've probably answered that question, because it looks like your whole life you've just been listening to music. What was your journey into becoming a musician?
Oh, thank you for asking. It's a lovely question to ask, because it's something I could never tire of talking about, because it's something that music is really the only thing I believe in. Really, I mean, and when I say that, I really mean it. I mean, I don't have a TV. I don't have a car. I don't swim. I don't drink. I don't have a love life. I just do music, and I believe in music to such a degree that I'm really not interested in anything else in the world. So what happened was, I was at the Gaeltacht as a child, and I met a boy, a really gorgeous looking boy, and it was entirely platonic, because I was, younger than him anyway. But we just got talking, and I went to see him in his dorm, and I walked in. I opened the door. I always remember this. It was a Saturday morning, and I opened the door, and he was in there with his roommate. And there was this music coming out of the stereo that he had. He had like some sort of a portable, music system. Mm-hmm. And it sounded extraordinary. And it was the Smiths. It was the sound of the Smiths. It was one of the early tracks on Louder Than Bombs. It was either Shoplifters of the World Unite or Is It Really So Strange? It was one of the first few tracks on that record. Maybe Sheila Take a Bow or Panic. It was one of those. And I heard it and I fell in love with it instantly. And I knew that this was what I needed in my life, and it was what I was unwittingly looking for. And it gave me a sense of direction that I had lacked hitherto. And from that point onwards, because I didn't have, I didn't have a dad in my life. I didn't have older siblings. I didn't have any cool relatives. There was no way for me to really find alternative music culture, indie culture, good music, because you weren't really going to hear that stuff on mainstream radio or mainstream TV, same as it is today. So it's, how do you find that? How do you find the gold? It's like you're panning for gold. And when I heard the Smiths, it was like the doors opened, and through exploring their back catalogue and reading the book, there was a really important book my mum very kindly got for me for Christmas, which was Morrissey and Marr, The Severed Alliance, written by Johnny Rogan. And that was hugely transformative. I basically learned how to speak English from reading that book. I learned more from reading that book than I did from all my years in school, seriously. And that taught me about music culture, about the history of the Smiths, the bands that they influenced, the bands who influenced them. And then I was able to discover each of their, that's how I read about Joy Division for the first time. That's how I read about people like Lou Reed. And then, so then if you find about that, you go listen to them. And then it just opens up, another door and another door. And it's like, to quote Genesis on that, the chamber of 32 doors. So there are a lot more doors than that. And the band, the Doors. So yeah, that's how I found my way. And essentially that was one of the two main kind of transformative experience to lead me to where I am today, and to have become what I am.
Brilliant. So when did you start recording music, or when did you start writing songs? Is that?
Yeah, well, that came about. I had heard about this summer school. It was like a music school run by a guy called Frank Kearns, lovely fella, and it was being held in Howth. And I could barely play at this point. I'd never written a song in my life, but I felt a real compulsion to try and go to this school. And at this time, I'd moved so often throughout my childhood that by the time I reached, I was living in Swords, I didn't have any friends, because I kept losing my groups of friends every time I had to move area. And I moved to a really kind of tough, school, physically very kind of violent, intimidating place. And, I was like the only Smiths fan, the only misfit, the only weirdo in this sea of like techno scallies. And so that was tough. So what happened was I tried to find an outlet, and I heard about this music summer school, and I went to it, and I wrote my first song there based on the women's prison soap opera Prisoner Cell Block H. Okay. And the thing is, I think this is actually really interesting, because most people who write their first songs write about themselves.
Yeah.
Their feelings, their thoughts. And in fact, most people, full stop, write about themselves. And I've never really been interested in doing that. And to this day, I have no interest in writing about myself. And from the get-go, it's interesting looking back that even my very first song wasn't about me. It was a character study of a woman, which is what I'm doing now. It's funny how, I've always been drawn to do that for whatever reason. So I wrote this song called Smith Bounces Back, which was about B. Smith, who was like the top dog in this women's prison soap opera called Prisoners All Okay, which used to be, shown on late night on TV. And I wrote that song. I demoed it there, a very, ramshackle demo, but it was a starting point enough to give me enough of a grounding to have somewhere to start from at the start, writing, and open the doors. And I wrote, kind of exhaustively after that. And I always used to write on my own until I was in Session Lots, which is the first time I actually co-wrote songs. And that was actually the first band I was in that got airplay. And we'd like 3 radio hits in 2017. And then that band came to an end. And then I ended up kind of just drifting out of music for a while. And I was really taking up my time with my blog, the Keeley Chronicles. And by that stage, I discovered the case of Inga Maria Hauser back in 2016, and I overnight became obsessed with her, obsessed with the case, fascinated, wanted to try and help if I could in any way I could. So devoted all my time and energy to trying to do that, and trying to build a people power movement to try and, if I could, try and bring about change, or try and reinvigorate that kind of the campaign for justice, and also, I suppose, initiate a campaign to focus and highlight and spotlight Inga's legacy, which I felt was kind of had been overlooked, and something that I felt really inspired by. And then after a while, I just felt the lure of music too strong to resist, and I started putting ads online, trying to put a band together. And that's how I met Alan McGuire, who's the producer of the Keeley Records, and we formed a partnership. And I write all the songs, he produces, and we both play the instruments together, and I sing. And then not too long after that, I managed to put a band together. And so that's kind of just how it, all developed, kind of flowered from there on.
It's really interesting. It's really, really interesting. And I love the fact that you got to a summer school to start writing, because I think that, so many people just need that one opportunity just to open the gates. There's so many talented people, and it's great. And it's great to hear that story of how you got into music as well. And I also find it really interesting, like your subject matter, because you've, like, your first song writing about a women's prison or the TV show, and to go from that to write about the murder victim as well. I think it's really interesting. I actually think it says a lot about you, and I think it's lovely, because you're giving a voice to people who might not have a voice. Does that make sense?
Exactly. That's it, spot on. And thank you for perceiving that in that way, because that very much feels like what I tried to do.
Yeah, I just feel it's something that strikes me as a really valid use of my own voice, to try and give a voice to someone who doesn't have that voice.
Yeah, so using your platform to give a voice to other people. That's really lovely. I know you've played you've played a good few gigs over the pandemic. I know I've seen you play in London as well. That must have been I know, because I know for me, we didn't go out at all like COVID, so it was difficult. Was that difficult to organise the gigs, or difficult to do it physically, or?
Yeah, well, what happened was we played our first gig 4 days before the pandemic struck. We played our first gig on the 5th of March 2020. So unwittingly, everything was about to shut down, and I had booked the gigs. I booked 6 gigs for the band, which were obviously then shredded overnight when the pandemic struck and we went into lockdown. So all of that year, we didn't get to play another show. We did one kind of online stream show for Time Tunnel, this kind of music group. And then the following year, again, we were left in a kind of a gigless void, as everyone was to a large degree. So when we finally got the opportunity to play, it was really, really welcome, because there's been such a drought of live music, and for musicians, playing live is sort of the lifeblood of what you do, because it gives you an outlet and allows you to conjure up your kind of sonic spells amongst yourselves that you wouldn't otherwise. It's really where the interplay between musicians kind of comes into its own. And when we were invited to take part at the Dublin Keys Festival in August of last year, 2021, that was a wonderful opportunity. However, it was still during the period where audiences were not allowed to attend shows. So we played in an empty room, and it was streamed, and it went out online. It got a lot of views and a lot of really lovely feedback. But that was our first gig as a band, because Tim, our drummer joined us for that. So it was only our second gig ever, but it was our first gig as this lineup. And then the next step was when we played in Whelan's in October. It was our first headliner and first time ever playing in front of the crowd. So that was amazing to get to play downstairs in Whelan's and to manage to kind of sell it out after such a long, sonic starvation. But what happened was I had major surgery just a few weeks prior to that gig. So physically, I was really ailing, and I could barely walk on the day of the gig. I don't know how I did that show. It's a miracle. But that's just me. I'm very dogged. I believe in. I never cancel shows ever. I wouldn't do it. I would have to be shot dead to cancel a gig. Seriously, I don't understand this thing of bands pulling out of this, pulling out of that. If you've got a gig, you do the gig. It doesn't matter how far you travel. If there's one person there, if there's 1,000 people there, whatever, the music is all. The cause is all. So to get to play in London was really exciting. That was like the next show that we did. It was only our second gig in front of a crowd. But that was really the brainchild of our label, Dimple Discs, who've been just so fantastic to work with and just really love being on the label and because it's such an artist focused label, such a left field true indie stalwart with real indie values, and we were originally going to be opening that show because it was our first London gig, but various things happened and various acts had to pull out for various reasons, in relation to things. And we ended up headlining it, which was lovely. Unfortunately, we had a long enough set that we could play. So we played there. It was actually last month. We played in the Lexington in London, and it was just brilliant. I mean, the sound was incredible. The crowd were lovely. And we got to do things as a band that we'd never gotten to do because of the pandemic. Because over in the UK, things are obviously things are open to, more of an extent. So we got to go to an all-night rave, and we got to just hang out, like
have fun.
Yeah, have fun. It's like this concept, whatever happened to that. So that was probably the best weekend of my life, really, just being with my bandmates in the UK. And even though I was still, physically only 50%, recovered from my surgery, and we were having to do things like hump gear on the tube, face to face, when all wearing masks. And it's a miracle none of us caught COVID, because we ended up in this all night rave in Brixton, which just before that Omicron wave hit London, and London is like, the kind of Omicron central, and we were right there in the midst of it, but we all passed our PCR tests and anti-antigen tests and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's been just a really exciting kind of roller coaster, and I think it feels like we're kind of poised for so many things, hopefully, this new year. And, Hot Press very kindly nominated us as one of the acts of the what do they call it again?
Like sort of up and coming, like ones to watch this year.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, ones to watch. Hot for 2020.
Yeah, congratulations! It's brilliant, and it's great to see it, and it's so well deserved. We're all watching now. So I suppose your new single. Do you want to tell us about your current single and the new EP?
Oh yes, thank you. The new EP, Echo Everywhere. What happened was Brave Warrior was the first EP, and there was like an opening salvo, and it got an amazing, reaction worldwide, kind of in terms of airplay. And the thought of following it up, I thought, I'm a big believer in and I suppose as well with the storyline and the arc of all of the records, which all relates to the central theme of our work and of my work, which is all about Inga Maria Hauser. I just thought it was time that the tale were told in a deeper sense, and I suppose sonically it's a richer work. It's an even richer work than Brave Warrior. It has a real depth of sound, and a lot of that is down to Alan and his fantastic production. And he and I kind of really strove with Echo Everywhere to create a sort of a sound world that's really quite expansive and epic and echoey. There's a spacey, kind of touch and a sound, which I love. So it's quite psychedelic, and there's kind of dream pop elements there as well. And I suppose it's a continuation of this sonic voyage that we're on. And To London Sunrise, which is the current single, is, I think it's the dreamiest thing that we've released so far. It's a really kind of there's a woozy quality to it, and the Keeley modus operandi can be summed up in one maxim, which is bliss out. The whole reason why I play music live, apart from wanting to pay homage to Inga, is to lose myself in sound and to just swim in that sound. And that's why, to me, I'm delighted when lots of people come to the gigs. But if nobody came, I would be fine with that as well, because it's just about getting to swim in the sound. And you don't need 2,000 or 20,000 people to do that. You just need, to be in the midst of this kind of sonic soup that we kind of conjure, myself and my bandmates Tim, Marty, and Martin. So yeah, it's a really it's a further, I think, development of our kind of blissful, kind of woozy dream pop, kind of sound world.
So I'm just going to come back, because you were talking about colours and music, and I want to know if I've got the colours right for your song, because I have that bit too. So I was seeing like pale pinks and pale blues, and like, I'm probably completely wrong, and I don't know, just pastel colours all around with sparkles. That's kind of what I'm seeing, but I don't know if that's what.
That's lovely. That's really lovely to hear. Like I see it as definitely pastel shades, quite kind of yellowy kind of sound, but it's lovely to hear people perceive music in that way, and because there's more to music than music. It's so tied up with memories and feelings and emotions and dreams and fears, and you can get lost in music, caught in a trap, as the song goes. And I think in particular, kind of there's just something about, being a Gemini as I am, I always feel drawn to extremes. And I suppose that in order to kind of find myself in a sort of a neutral, or kind of a sense of equilibrium, I often just can't help but construct polar opposites around me and within me, and in terms of music. So like, if you come to see us live, you'll hear that there's a very there's a very blissful side to what we do, and really immersive and kind of like entrancing, kind of hypnotic quality. But then there's some really kind of savage sounds as well, really kind of explosive, noise. And I think having it's almost like sort of it's a musical picture, because it's alluding to life in a lot of ways. If you think about it, like, life is not all plain sailing, but it's not all harsh aspects either. There's that sort of dance between the two, between the soft and the ragged, and I suppose musically our set kind of reflects that.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing you play live. Really looking
thank you so much.
So, are there any dates coming up, or is there anywhere we can watch it? Okay, great.
Yeah, there's. But I'm actually gonna. This is an exclusive. No one knows this yet. We're going to announce this very soon, within a couple of days. But I thought I might as well. You've been very kind to ask, and I think, yeah, I'll just spill the beans. We're going to be playing our next Dublin headliner at the Grand Social on Thursday, April the 28th in Dublin.
I'm writing this down so I put it in my phone. Okay. That's brilliant.
And then also we're hoping to start playing dates around the country as well. We're kind of looking into booking dates in Ireland and kind of further afield for the spring, and we're really spending a lot of time focusing on looking to go back to the UK. We're looking to play a string of dates in London in the spring and the summer and the autumn as well. So yeah, lots in the pot, so to speak.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that date. I'm really excited about it.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for asking. Really
looking forward to seeing you there. So I suppose if we better bring this to a close, because we're going to have to play half an hour. Well, but I want to play half an hour of your music as well. So where can people check you out? Just give their social media links again. So it's Keeley Sound.
Well, it's Keeley Sound on Twitter and Instagram, and we're just Keeley, kind of block capitals on Facebook, and it's KWLEY. And we have a YouTube channel with lots of live clips and official videos for the songs, and occasionally little kind of vignettes from yours truly. And we're I would be kind of most active on the socials. I do all of our kind of social media, being a kind of Gemini, rent a quote. But all of the songs are online on YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, Bandcamp, in particular. Big up for Bandcamp, because I love Bandcamp. I think it's a great platform.
So if people want to buy the music, the best place to go is to Bandcamp, and that's it.
Well, Bandcamp, but also Brave Warrior, the EP, is going to be coming out. It's out now on CD, and it's in Tower Records, Spin Dizzy Records, and both in Dublin, and also in Rollercoaster Records in Kilkenny. But it's coming out on vinyl. It's going to be, because we've been waiting, like most indie artists in the world. There's been this crazy vinyl shortage for the last year.
Yeah.
And so I signed to Dimble Discs in May, and we ordered the EP then, and only now is it actually going to be coming out on 10-inch vinyl, absolutely beautiful vinyl package, and that's already available to pre-order from the Rough Trade website, from Tower Records website, and from Bandcamp, actually, which is the label's own kind of page on Bandcamp. Yeah,
so lots of exciting stuff happening. You've got the Hot Press one to watch, the Grand Social gig on Thursday the 28th of April, and vinyl and CD, and you're in Tower Records.
Yes.
That's brilliant. It's really good, Key.
I'm
going to ask her, we're going to play, the rest of the show is going to be your music, but the first two tracks I want you to, could you introduce the first two tracks? So what two tracks would be do you want to play first, straight after the interview? If you could introduce
good question. Sure. Well, okay. The first thing, I suppose, if I could choose a track from the first EP, Brave Warrior, I would go with Lost Words, which quite incongruously, perhaps was the debut single. Obviously, you think of Lost Words having a real sense of finality about it, but it was the song that I decided to go with first. I just thought it was something very fresh and propulsive about it, and something that really kind of would introduce people to the story, to the overall storyline, and it's one of my favorite songs that I've ever written. So Lost Words would be the first song that I'd go with.
Okay, and what would be the straight after that? What we're going to go into from Lost Words?
Straight after that, I would go with a song from Echo Everywhere. Okay. I think I'm going to go with a song called I'm trying to decide in my mind between
I know, it's
track
hard.
2, Never O'Clock, and track 3, which is Till London Sunrise. Okay, I'm going to go with track 2, which is Never O'Clock, which you've very kindly played.
I love that.
Yes,
I love that.
Never O'Clock.
Cool. Okay.
It's a kind of jangly gem.
It is. It is a gem. Well, they're all gems.
Oh, thank you so much.
So we're going to go straight into Brave Warrior and Last Words after this. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.